What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Roots and Streams podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Yamas, and today I am working on episode 3, and I will out myself if you are paying significantly close attention. This is actually the 4th week in this episode, but in between, I skipped a week and lost a little bit of consistency, but I think I'm very much back on track now. And this is like the middle of the week I'm recording this. This will be released Friday. I'm hoping to have everything done. And I want to share that, man, this has really been a turning point for me in my journey of unemployment, like laying myself off because I was a contracted worker and I can't take like a leave of absence. And I left my job and left it because I had my 4th child who we wanted to keep home, dealing with some mental health things, some losses in the family. And it seemed like the right time to take a step back and reevaluate where I am career-wise, spiritually. And it has definitely been a journey in the last year. And my 1 year leaving my job, firing myself, quitting anniversary is coming up on October 1st. I can't believe it's already been a year. And it has been quite the journey of this last year. And a lot of soul searching, a lot of feeling like I lost my soul and then finding it again and then feeling lost and without hope. And I am at a place where I feel like I'm finally getting myself back. Like I have my feet back under me, and God is definitely all to thank for that. And I'll go into little detail because I know sometimes people will just say things like, I'm blessed and it's because, all because of God. But I want to also give some context to that is that throughout this last year, I did receive definitely a financial blessing to help us get through the year, on top of what we already had available to us, and somehow have spent it and squandered some of it, and it being in and out of stock market and crypto trading and all of the anxiety of that, what it brought on and continues to bring on of, okay, I need to get this much more and then that much more. And then I lost some. It's like, well, I don't have a job and I need to pay these bills and then constantly watching it because, it's every day and things are always changing and there's always new news. And if you're in crypto, it's like 24/7. So the price is always adjusting. And it was just constant. And it was this constant anxiety filled part of my life that I didn't really deal with before when I had a job. I had a steady paycheck. I didn't have to worry about trading or anything like that. I had investments, but I really didn't look at them because I didn't need them. And then all of a sudden now that I don't have a job, I'm like just so worried that I'm making the right trade. And then when I make the wrong trade, like it just eats me up inside. And I've been just dealing with this off and on all throughout this last year. And there's more to the story, and I probably will share it in its entirety another time. And in talking with my wife, I just realized like, man, I need to step back. Like I need to be okay with how much God has for me and in our bank account right now, and how much that's going to last us. Because what it was feeling like is like we'll be out of money tomorrow, and that wasn't the truth. I have several months, not quite a year probably, but, maybe TMI, but I do have several months, but it felt like, if I keep messing up or I don't make more money in the stock market or crypto, like tomorrow we're going to be on the streets. And that was the anxiety. So like just crushing me and a lot of anxiety, a lot of, that I was feeling like in my chest just constantly, and I couldn't shake it. And it was kind of destroying, it felt like me internally destroying almost every day. And I was able to live through it. And I think a lot of us mask it really well. And a lot of people don't notice unless you really are good at noticing and the person very deeply. You'll kind of notice some things. And so in talking with my wife, she's like, well, why don't you just spend this next month, like just spend time with God? And, don't worry about it. We'll just, have faith that things will work out and just take the next month. If you're saying we have, more than that time, then just take the first month. And I needed to hear that from her, even though I knew that that was the right thing to do. And I needed time to just be quiet with God, just pray, be in worship, let him speak to me through the Bible and just in quiet time. And so that's what I've done this week, starting, really like kind of into the weekend and Monday. And it wasn't really feeling like I was going to get my feet under me, but, committing a couple of days, this is already 3 days in, today's Wednesday, I feel renewed. I feel connected again. I feel almost like no anxiety. I still thinking about finances here and there, but I'm kind of fasting me looking at even the stock market, and that's been difficult. And just spending more time with God, like praying, and he just like revealing and just speaking to me very silently. And then all of a sudden I'll like read and do some Bible study and things will come up that came up in my prayer. And so this has been a very Bible study and like discovery and searching few days for me. And it's been so peaceful to just, okay, don't think about anything else. Like just, take care of the kids, breakfast, and do the house chore things. But also I'm getting a lot of time and attention on just spending time with God. And it's been so refreshing, so amazing. I feel really like back to my old self. I feel brand new in a way. And I want to keep this going. And I want to share a little bit about what I was reading and what I was discovering in these last few days. And so the title of today's video will be Don't Sell Your Birthright: 3 Ways to Hold On to God's Promise in a World of Distractions. And so those 3 ways, one's going to be to evaluate whether we are holding on to or going after seeds or stew, and I'll explain that. Second one is going to be self-patience. Keep wrestling. And the third one is fight faith amnesia. That one probably already makes sense already. And this video might be a little longer than they have been. And I am trying to be okay with that. And I hope you're okay with that, because I think I'm going to go into some story time. There's a lot of Bible stories, and whether you're a Christian or not, you probably have heard of them. Some like Adam and Eve in the garden, and when they make the mistake and eat fruit that they shouldn't, or you've probably heard of like Moses and the 10 Commandments. You probably heard of these various stories of Jesus. Maybe you know about Joseph, not Joseph, Jesus' father, but Joseph, the one that gets sent into slavery. Maybe you've heard of that character. I'm trying to think of maybe some other popular characters. But there's one that I've known about, but it doesn't really get a lot of airtime, and it just really blew my mind how significant this story is that doesn't get told that much. And I'd read it before, and so I'm going to read it. So it's still in Genesis. If you don't know, Genesis has a lot of those stories that I just mentioned, and this one's about the story of Esau and Jacob. So twins. They were twins, and they are sons of Isaac, who you may see another popular story, like Isaac, who's going to be sacrificed by his father Abraham. And then God intervenes and says, no, don't do it. It's just a test. So that Isaac. And so let's get to reading to get through this podcast. So Genesis 25:19, this is how the story of Isaac begins. He was the beloved son of Abraham, the successor of Abraham's blessing. And just so you know, if you were into the Bible, this is the Passion Translation. May read a little different than translations that you're used to. When he was 40, he married Rebekah. She was the daughter of Bethuel and the sister of Laban. Oh man, things in the Bible, sometimes the names is funny. Both her father and brother were Arameans, not Armenians, from Padan Aram. Now, Rebecca, don't get lost in these names. Trust me, there's a lot of good stuff here. Now, Rebecca was unable to have children, but Isaac pleaded with Yahweh, God Yahweh, on behalf of his wife because she was barren. She couldn't have children, and she did get pregnant. So her husband pleaded with God, prayed to God, hey, my wife, she can't have children. I want her to get pregnant. Please allow this. And God fulfilled that request. And he responded to Isaac's prayer. During her pregnancy, Rebecca could feel twins thrashing and struggling with each other inside her womb. So she went to inquire of Yahweh. So just so you know, I know in Passion Translation, Yahweh is just the name of God, like Father of Jesus, like God, saying, "Why do I have to live with this?" And Yahweh answered her, saying, "The two sons in your womb will become two nations, and the two peoples within you will become rivals." And let me stop here for a second. So the reason that I'm reading this story, I know I just jumped into it, is because it is going to set up really a big pattern and symbol and something to kind of wrestle with a little bit and to think about all throughout the Bible and in our lives, whether we are grabbing onto something that is a seed and will bring more fruit in our lives and others, or something that is of instant gratification. And so I just want to say that in this story does get dramatic. I think it's a good read. So I'll continue. So the two sons in your womb will become two nations, and the two peoples within you will become rivals. So it's already saying the sons are going to become rivals to each other, and they're going to be separate nations. One people will become stronger than the other. The older will serve the younger. So they're twins, but one's going to come out first. So that'll be the older will serve the younger. This is what God's telling Rebecca, the mother. And when the time came for Rebecca to give birth, sure enough, she had twins. The first one came out reddish and covered with hair, like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. And his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So the second is grabbing Esau's heel. So they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 when the twins were born. So their father was 60 when they were born. And when the boys grew up, Esau became a rugged outdoorsman and a hardy hunter. But Jacob was more contemplative, content to stay close to home. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of eating wild game, but Rebekah dearly loved Jacob. One day, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau returned from hunting, and he was famished, smelling the aroma of food. Esau said to Jacob, "I'm starving. Let me eat some of that red stuff you're cooking." This is why he is also called Edom. I'm guessing that has to do with like red. "Yes, but first you must trade me your birthright," Jacob replied. What is birthright? We'll go into that later. "Can't you see I'm dying of hunger?" Esau said. "What good is the birthright if I'm dead?" But Jacob insisted. "First, swear to me that you'll give it to me." So Esau swore an oath and surrendered his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some lentil stew and bread. When Esau had finished eating and drinking, he just got up and walked away. Esau cared nothing about his own birthright. Oh, so I know they jumped really quick. So these twins are born, one hanging onto the heel. What does that mean? That has some meaning. Kind of like is echoing a little bit of like a snakiness, like a cheater, like that is grabbing onto the heel the same way like a snake may bite a heel. And that's even echoing back into like the story of Adam and Eve and the snake. And then all of a sudden, like this guy is giving up his birthright, right? So one of the twins is giving up his birthright because he came out first. And in this culture, the firstborn has the birthright to a double portion of the inheritance. So like if there's 4 pieces of land and there's 3 sons, then the first son will get double the land and double the money and double the just responsibility, and it's just really seen as the next patriarch, the next like head and pillar of the household. And Esau seemingly doesn't. I mean, he cares. Maybe he cares about it. I don't know, but he is willing to trade it because he's just so hungry. And Jacob is able to convince him to trade it away for some food. And so let me continue the story because there's one other part, and then we'll jump into it. So, oh, I thought I had it right. 27. Sorry. So Genesis 1 through 29. So now they're older. Their dad's about to die. And so Isaac, their father, when Isaac was very old and blind, he called for his oldest son, Esau, and asked him, "My son." "I'm here, father," Esau answered. "As you can see, I am now an old man," Isaac said, "and I may die any day now. So please take your hunting gear, your bow and arrows, and go out into the field and hunt some wild game for me. Then prepare me a savory meal, the food I love, and bring it to me. After I eat, I will bless you from my innermost being before I die." Now Rebecca's the wife, the mother of these twins, Rebecca was eavesdropping on their conversation. So when Esau left for the field to hunt for game to cook for Isaac, she found Jacob and said to him, "I just overheard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare a savory meal for me. Afterward, I will bless you in the presence of Yahweh before I die. Listen carefully, my son, and do everything I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 of the best young goats. I'll cook them for your father and prepare a delicious meal the way he loves it. Then you take it to him and eat, and your father will bless you before he dies." Jacob objected, "But my brother Esau is covered with hair, and I'm smooth-skinned. If my father feels my hairless skin, he'll know I'm not Esau. He'll think I'm a trickster, and I'll end up bringing a curse upon myself rather than a blessing." "My son," his mother said, "let any curse against you fall on me alone. Just do what I say and go and get the goats for me." So he went and got the goats and brought them to his mother. She prepared a delicious meal, just the way his father loved it. Then Rebekah picked out the best clothes of her older son Esau, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She covered Jacob's hands and the soft part of his neck with goat skin. Then she handed Jacob the tasty dish and the bread that she had prepared, and he took them to Isaac. "Father," Jacob said. Isaac replied, "Which one of my sons are you?" Jacob answered, "It's I, Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you asked. Please sit up. Eat some of this delicious game you love, so that you may give me your innermost blessing." Isaac answered his son, "How in the world did you find game so quickly, my son?" "Yahweh, your God, caused it to come right to me," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please, please, come closer so that I may touch you, my son. I need to really know for certain that you are Esau." So Jacob inched closer to his father Isaac, who felt his skin and said, "You sound like Jacob, but your hands are Esau's." Because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's, Isaac was tricked and did not recognize that it was really Jacob. As he was about to give him his blessing, Isaac asked him again, "Are you really my son Esau?" Jacob answered, "I am." Then bring the food to me," Isaac said, "and let me eat my son's game. Then I will give you my blessing." So Jacob gave his father the food, and he ate it. He brought him wine, and he drank it. Then Isaac said to him, "My son, come near and kiss me." So he came near and kissed him. Isaac recognized the smell of his son's clothes and blessed him, saying, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a lush field that Yahweh has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew, the fatness of earth, and an abundance of grain and new wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. May you be master over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed." All right. That was a lot of reading. That's definitely the longest reading I've done. Sorry if you're like checked out, you're like, "Matt, one more sentence and I would have been done." And so I read that story because it is so vital to just the Bible in general, and I think also life, of how we can sell our birthright for instant gratification. And that's really what this story is about. It's about how one brother, Esau, and who is really looked down upon in this culture and like in these stories, and for the people who come after and read these stories, they're like, wow, like it is laughable. Like, how can somebody sell their birthright, like their blessing, off for a meal? Like, there's no way you're that hungry. Like, they probably would think, I'd rather die then sell that, because there is no life without the blessing of God and from my Father. And on the other hand, especially talking with my wife, is, well, have some empathy for Esau. He was tricked. He was hungry, and Jacob is conniving, and he's just a cheater, a heel grabber. And Rebecca, his mom, really was the trickster and got him in on tricking his dad into stealing the the birthright and the blessing. And there's so much to this story and so much I've unpacked in this story. And I invite you to, go back to it and keep looking at it. And it's just so interesting, and how these two characters, these two brothers, represent opposite things, almost like a yin and yang. I wouldn't say quite. I want to say one's evil and one's good, but it kind of is that, especially in this culture, is that one is seen as just wanting instant gratification, selfishness, only thinking about yourself. And the other one, even though he was a trickster and conniving, he knew what ultimately was important. And that was going after what God had promised his family and his nation, and the blessing that he would continue on and bring forward, that it was more about him, and that he wanted to take on this like big responsibility, and it was really important to him, even though he was super flawed. It was about how God can still use him because of his desire to take on that blessing and responsibility. And it really made me think about, right, am in my desires, in my wants and motives, are they things that are just stew in my family, in my life? Am I just seeking them because I think it's just fun, or I can, check it off my bucket list, or I can post it on social media, or I can, flex on others and say, I've done this much and I've earned this much and I have this many titles? Or am I going after things because they are seeds, because they are going to be a blessing to others? I'm going to carry forward God's goodness and blessings further than me, and they are more so eternal. And I think really that's what's being wrestled with here. I'm hoping that makes sense. Uh, there definitely is a lot to unpack, and you might be thinking, like, how did you get all of that just from these two brothers fighting over? Well, that's really what this story, at its heart is about. Um, it's about, like, you know, God will use the people wherever they are. All He needs is for them to be willing to carry on a blessing for others. And that's really the promise. And I had to dig deeper into, like, what is birthright? Where did that come from? Why would Jacob even want that? Um, and and really, it starts with Abraham, which is the first one that is getting a blessing for all the nations. And in short, he's getting this promise from God to have land and descendants, and to have a great family, but really it is ultimately a blessing for him that is going to be used to bless everybody else in the world. And that is the blessing and the responsibility that he is carrying forward, to partner with God to help bring that to fruition. And I know that sounds really grand and meta, but it really is about, like, so we, when we can stop and think and really think about our decisions going to help, our children to become more content and more patient and more loving, and for their children, um, I guess really the word that comes to mind is like legacy. And it just, in this time of me thinking about, like, my future and spending time with God and what's next for me, as I make decisions, this is like a helpful story to make sure that I am trying to be more like Jacob, at least in my desires, not so much in the character. And that takes me to my second point. And second way is to have self-patience and to keep wrestling. And what does that mean? So self-patience, because as you could see in the story, Jacob and his mom, Rebecca, who helped him connive his way into his family blessing that wasn't meant for him, at least not in his father's eyes, but God prophesied it and told Rebecca, and she followed through with it. And whether or not you think she did it the right way, we'll never know. Uh, we'll never know if that was God's plan to use her to connive, or they should have been patient and saw what God can do without lying and cheating and stealing. We don't know. But God did declare it to Rebecca from birth that the first would serve the second. And I say to be have self-patience, because Jacob was not perfect. He was far from it. Actually, right after his brother finds out that he stole and he tricked his father into his blessing, because words are still very powerful, I believe. And they were extremely powerful in this time because words were like contracts. And the fact that his father said it to him and blessed him with his words and like breath is also like very powerful. In this culture, in this biblical culture, that it couldn't be undone. It had already been said and already been blessed over him. And so when his brother Esau, the older brother, finds out, like, he's devastated and he's just crying and he wants to kill Jacob. And so Jacob has to flee, and his parents send him away because they don't want them to fight and to kill each other. And so patience with yourself is that ultimately, right, if we evaluate and see our motives are correct and we're trying to do things to help others, to bless our children, to bless people in our church, and to be generous and to be helpful and to really be someone to lean on, or someone that can be seen as somebody that is somebody to connect with and somebody that they can rely on, is more important than being perfect. I think God just saw that Jacob was willing to serve him and saw how important it was to carry on the blessing that was a promise to his people and the mission that God had his family on. And he's like, I could work with that. Like, he may be conniving, he may be a liar, he may be a mama's boy, he may be out on the run and have nothing to his name now, but I can work with that. And I think God can work with us wherever we are, whether we have it all figured out, whether we're lying and cheating still. If we can start to think about our motives, okay, I know I'm doing these things wrong, and I might not be the most patient person, and I get angry a lot, but I know ultimately my heart is set on, I want to do the right thing. I want to be a blessing to others. I may not act it out, but this is my inner desire. And God saw that in Jacob. And he's like, I could work with that. I could work with that. And Esau, who may have been a nicer guy, we don't get too much of him. He seemed like a nice guy later on in more stories. But the one trait he was missing was that he did not seem to have enough weight on his birthright, on carrying on the blessing of God. And so God chose to use Jacob. And the reason why I say keep wrestling is because Jacob is so flawed and so just an interesting character that he even wrestles God physically, it is said, because he wants this blessing, this responsibility, and he like wrestles it away from God, and he wins. And so God renames him. And in the win, he actually gets like a permanent injury to his hip. It's a very, very interesting story. A lot of these stories, as you can see, I thought it read pretty dramatic. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. And so he wrestles and God renames him Israel. And you might be familiar with that. It's the name of a country. But first it was the name of a person. And this person in Israel means the one who wrestles with God. And so throughout his life, he's wrestling with God, trying to take this blessing. And even though God's like already has proclaimed that he will get it, he's maybe unnecessarily wrestling away his blessing from God. But he's just so gung ho with making sure he gets this blessing and carries on this promise that God has given his people since Abraham. Uh, and so I find that encouraging. Is like, okay, I might not have it all figured out, and I don't know, but I gotta keep wrestling for this blessing, and maybe maybe also when I do get a chance to realize, like, no, I'm blessed regardless. Like, God has purpose for me, and I can just take patience and maybe not be like Jacob. But if you're wrestling and that's all you know how to do and you keep fighting with God, like, keep on fighting, keep on wrestling with him, and he will work with you as he has done with Jacob. Because I really think it's about like a posture of our heart. It's not about perfection. God will work with us if our desires and our motives are on eternal things, on helping others, and that those helping others will help their others and their children and help them to have a better life. And it's like this eternal, ongoing blessing that we are able to be used to, like, be a wave and to breathe life into other people's lives, and that can echo into their relatives and their children's children. Um, and something I wrote, he's not looking for perfection, good character, pure, sinless. He's looking for people who have a desire to inherit a blessing that is beyond them. What do you mean inherit? Well, we only get to inherit as non-Israelites, is through Jesus and making that choice to be adopted into this blessing that God carried out through a chosen people, but it was always meant for all of humanity. And you can look it up. You can go look back on Abraham. It wasn't meant just for the Israelites. They were just a chosen people, that God saw that could work with, just like Jacob. So, and he uses them and it carries all the way on through to Jesus, who oddly enough was adopted into it as well, because he's not really Joseph's son. And I'll leave that Easter egg there for you to unpack. I've recently unpacked that. But God's not looking for us to be just, all perfect or anything. He just wants to see where our heart is. Do we care about others? Are we interested in, doing good by our children, and want to be better parents and want to be better husbands, so that perhaps maybe other marriages and other parents can see the lessons we've learned, and we can help to maybe teach or pastor or mentor, after, God has worked on us. And it's really about kind of paying it forward. And God wants to see if that's where we are. And the last point I have is fight faith amnesia. This one, really hit me recently. And I really thank Tim Ross for a recent podcast he did with his best friend Preston about, am I following the will of God, or what is the will of God? Or it was something like about, do I know I'm like in God's will? Like, am I following am I in my purpose, and things like that? And talked a lot about that and faith. And he talked about how for him, it was just these constant stories from when he was even younger, like just finding $100 was so much money to him and exactly what he needed. And he knew it was a God thing that he found that money on the floor, of when he went to go get, the ring for his wife, and he had no money. He had no job, but he just knew that God told him to go to the store, go to this store. This is the ring you're going to buy. And the guy like was really surprised, but could see that he was in love, and he gave him the rings. Like, you know what, this thing takes time to process anyways. Go get your job, go get your girl, pay me like in 3 months, and you're fine. And just like he kept on running, and it made me help me to remember, like, wait, God has been faithful in my life. God, I remember, even like my mom questioning like whether I had everything together, or was figuring out my career. And I remember, like, at that time, I could feel God telling me, like, everything's going to be all right. Like, you don't, I'm not going to tell you exactly what you'll be doing. And I didn't do what I thought I was going to do as career wise, but I'm going to just bless you so much and you'll be able to bless your friends and the people around you. And I've seen that come to fruition. I am not trying to flex or brag, but I have seen mine and my wife's finances and our just situation be able to bless others that some of the people we don't even really know that well personally. And just like even the way like I got a promotion in the last job that I had was very God thing and it was unexpected. And like just him saving my marriage and coming up with an idea that was totally out of left field for me and wasn't something I was expected. Like if I really sit like and think about all the ways that God has come through and been faithful to me, it helps to re-energize me and know that he could do it again. And I know that when we're young, it's like, well, I have nothing to lose. I have no responsibility. Like, I'm just going to put it all out there and see what God does. And it does seem easier. And now that we have more responsibility and we have a lot more to lose, it's like, did God get small all of a sudden? And I have to remind myself, like, no, like, this is just even more of a great opportunity for God to come through and to prove himself faithful so that it may be a testimony so that we can be impressed on how great he is through being faithful to us and that we can hopefully like I think he does it and tries to be really grand so that we can impress others. And again, not to flex, but to impress others through like, wow, this is the God that you're following. Let me try this out. Like what happens if I do kind of call on Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, I don't know if you're there, but I need some help in this area. And then just throw those words out there and see what happens. Like, I think God wants us to even just take an inch forward, like to help others take an inch forward. And it's through our stories and through how he's been faithful to us. But it can only happen when we don't have faith amnesia. I think when we can remember of how he's been faithful to us and through our lives, and maybe he has, and maybe you're just starting your faith walk, but I would, even if you don't, you're not like, I don't know, studying the Bible or go to church often, like think about when perhaps it was beyond your capability and just surprising. It's like, you know what, that might have been God there. And I know for me, like even when I was a child, like thinking of like my dad trying to break down our door, like this is really like traumatic thing to share out of nowhere. And he's super angry and going through like, some mental health issues. And like my mom's just praying her butt off. And I was like probably like 2 years old or something, but I remember it. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And then like the police showed up like right on time before you could break the door down. And like I've been sitting in my living room like crying, God, pointing out how that was him who saved me and my family. And I think he could do it again. And so that's why in this season I'm taking the time to fight against my faith amnesia and sit and remember that, okay, God, I have enough for today. And that's enough. I have enough for longer than that. And I'm going to do my best to not be anxious and afraid of what tomorrow holds because you've been faithful in the past. And I am going to hold on to being a blessing to others. The same thing that Jacob was fighting for, even though he wasn't perfect, but he was very much interested in getting a blessing from God so that he may carry it on for his family and for their legacy. And I think we all have this birthright. Thank God to Jesus that we've been cut into this blessing that he used another people for. And the world has so many distractions that are trying to take us out of that are trying to make us think that we have to be more selfish, that we have to connive or we have to numb ourselves or just think about the next, best thing to get and compare. And I'd argue that that is not necessary, that we are already promised something that's great. And then when we focus our eyes on being a blessing to others because we are being used by God, that God will just provide everything that we need. So I'm going to stop there. I'm pushing 40 minutes, yo. So again, don't sell your birthright, right? No matter how much the world is trying to distract you, remember to evaluate, right? What are your motives? What are your goals? Are they going to be, planting seeds into your life, your children, people around you, your community, or they just stew? Are they instant gratification? Right? Just to have like, one-off fun event and to show off to, another family member, or to, just for some quick pleasure that is not going to serve anyone else. And be patient with yourself. If your motives are in the right place and you're planting seeds, but you're not perfect, that's okay. One of the most important people in that nation in the Bible outside of Jesus was very much not perfect, and his mom was in on it. And so be patient with yourself. Know that, okay, I know my heart is in the right place and God's working on me and he will be faithful. I just have to just keep on knowing that I'm going after the right thing in his blessing. And 3, fight faith amnesia. Write down, remember where God has been faithful in your life, and he will continue to do so, and it will invigorate you, and it will bring the new faith that you need for the season that you're going into. All right, everybody, until next time, peace.